All right, we'll get going here. Hi, everybody. My name's John Bailey. I'm the director up here at the UC Hopland Research and Extension Center. And just wanted to start with kind of our mission here and give you an idea of our size and how long we've been existing. Purchased in 1951, our center is almost 5,400 acres. And, the impetus for this is just this webinar is to let you know what opportunities exist up here at Hopland and give you a little bit of overview of the facilities, what happened with the fire event, how the recovery is going, and what our research highlights are. So I'm recording this webinar. I'll ask everybody to just mute themselves, and we do have the chat feature functioning. So if any questions come up during this webinar, please type them into the chat, and then at the end we'll have time for answering those questions. All right, so Hopland has a pretty broad range of experiments and projects that have been happening over the last almost 70 years. There's quite a wide range from animal science through rangeland management, fire ecology, watershed management, and there's about 2,000 publications that have been published after research conducted here. There's such a great set of pre-existing data that's one of the wonderful things here at Hopland you have access to. I know a lot of you have heard about the natural reserve system, which is a set of reserves throughout the state of California. And there are some big differences between those natural reserves and the research and extension centers. Hopland is one of 9 research and extension centers throughout the state, and we really offer you the ability to manipulate the environment to use whatever different variables you want to. This is in contrast to the natural reserve system, where there's much less manipulation available. We also have and on offer a great research history and data set, and then I'll be going into some of the extensive facilities that we offer, and also what our staff is able to do for you. To give you an idea of where we're at, you can see the yellow star on the screen. That's where Hopland is located. We're up in the Mayacamas Mountains, about 2 hours north of UC Berkeley, and about 2 hours northwest of Davis. This is a map of our site. Down in the lower, I think you can see my cursor. If you can't, down in the lower left of the screen, we start out at about 600 acres with some irrigated pasture land. And then we rise up to a ridge at the way top of the center in the north part that is about 3,000 acres. One of the great things about the site here is the diversity of elevations and different ecozones. So everything from irrigated pasture land to riparian areas along a salmonid spawning stream to a range of oak woodlands. We've got 11 different species of oaks on site. We have vernal pools. We have perennial lakes, which are pretty rare in the North Coast range. And then we have some areas of chaparral and chamise up at the top. There are even some areas where we've got some conifers, mostly Doug fir, growing on the site. So there's a really broad range of different vegetation and a broad range of species on site, both flora and fauna. One of the things that did happen here this last year is a broad-scale wildfire event, and this has led to some really great research opportunities. Before I click off this slide, one last thing. All of the white lines are roads. We have about 40 miles of roads that give you great access to the center. We grade those roads every year, so you can come out here in your own vehicle, in a 2-wheel drive vehicle, and access most of the site. We also offer our own vehicles, UTVs and 4-wheel drives and trucks, so that you can conduct your research in all types of weather and even off-road. And then the red lines are our different pastures. which have different management regimes and grazing intensity over the years, which we have records for, so you can kind of choose the grazing intensity and history that you'd like for your project. This is a reverse color map just after the fire. So you can see kind of in the northern half of the screen there, we had about 3,200 acres of the 5,400 acres burn, varying levels of intensity. Up at the top of the site, you can see there's a couple of red areas. Those are where the fire skipped around. And so we have these islands of unburnt, bright green vegetation in the middle of the burnt area. And then the gray is mostly chaparral and chamise that was very fully consumed. The black is rangeland that was burnt. And then the two little islands of black down in the southern parts are prescribed fire that we did that same year. So that's also another thing that we offer is, you know, the ability to do things like prescribed fire. I'll go into that a little bit more later. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of an overview of the site here. These are just a couple of shots that we offer. Let's see. Okay, so now you should be seeing an overview of a map of kind of this Northern California coastal area. In the center is Clear Lake. Where it says bunkhouse, that is where Hopland's at. So what I'm going to do is give you a tour of the Hopland field station so you can kind of get an idea. So you can see to the left-hand side, it's an agricultural valley dominated by vineyards. And then on the right-hand side are the Mayacamas Mountains that go up to about 3,500 feet. We are in the center here, so I'm zooming in on kind of our headquarters area. And then we'll do a overview of the main center so you can get an idea of the facilities that we offer at the headquarters. So as you can see here, we have a bunkhouse. That's a dormitory that houses up to 18 people, male and female sides, a full kitchen, so we're able to accommodate fairly large groups. Then Shippey Hall, I'll show you some photos of that later. That's a beautiful conference hall that we have, which has a capacity for 220 people. So we've got great ability to host events and extension workshops. And you can see we also have a variety of residences, some of which are occupied by staff, but others of which we rent out on a nightly or monthly basis. So currently for researchers, we have a 1-bedroom that you can rent out by the night or the month. And then we also have a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, the original ranch house here, that you can rent out by the night or the month. And all of these things are offered at cost, so affordable. The bunkhouse is like $15 a night, the single bedroom is $50 a night, and the ranch house with the 4 bedrooms is $120 a night, which is great because if you're coming from the campuses a couple of hours away, having those accommodations really helps you be able to make the trip worthwhile by staying multiple days. I'm going to move on down through the center here, kind of heading north. So shops and warehouses, I'll go into this a little bit more, but we offer a full set of shops to fabricate your research plots and equipment, to do any repairs that you need. We also offer warehouse space, so if you need to store equipment here, we can do that. The main barn, we do have an animal care program here, so we have 125 ewes on site, a sheep flock, which we can use to do grazing treatments for you. Moving a little bit further north, you can see winding through the middle of the valley is Parsons Creek, which is a salmon spawning stream. Then we have a greenhouse and lysimeter. I'll go into those in a little bit more detail with up close photos. And then we have an extension barn where you can have events and trainings around our animals or any type of event that you would like. So what I'm going to do now is move to our website and show you some other imagery of the center here. So this is the homepage of our website, and I just want to show you, if you come down here and click on this tab about learn about post-fire research opportunities at ATREC, We have done some 360-degree drone images from different locations on the site. So here's an overview of the Hopland station, and I'm going to click on one of these, which will take us to a 360 drone image. So you can see here in the foreground our headquarters area. And this drone image was taken only a couple of weeks after the fire. So you can really see on the upper slopes, the fire is fresh. It doesn't look like that now. It's regrown with grass. And there's definitely different levels of tree mortality. But what I'm trying to show you here is kind of the lay of the land. Right now, we're at about 1,000 feet where the drone is at. And you've got the headquarters valley. We're looking kind of due north now. And then just to show you, we've got a range of dense hardwood forest. We've got fairly open grassland areas. This watershed that we're looking at has flumes in the bottom, which you can use to do any hydrology studies. We're open to doing restoration. So if you wanted to do restoration projects up here in the grassland, you can have that flume in the bottom for documenting the changes in the water flows. So now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and show you down here we have a large pasture area. We have a small experimental research vineyard. So we have the ability to do irrigated plots for you. Zoom back out. I'm just going to scroll around. This was a large-scale experiment conducted in the 1960s where this whole watershed was denuded. I just wanted to point this out because one of the things that we offer at the rec here is the ability to manipulate the variables that you'd like to study. I'm going to click out of this particular 360, and then we'll go up to the top of the center. Again, this was taken right after the fire, so the damage is fairly extreme. But what you will see here is the variability of the fire. We had some areas that were totally unscathed, and then we had areas of chaparral that were pretty burnt. This is looking back down from the center. We're looking south now and back down towards the headquarters. So zooming into those headquarters, just to give you a sense of the scale of the landscape and also the variability of the burn. So now I'm going to take us back to the webinar, to our PowerPoint slideshow. And what we're going to do now is look at some of the facilities that we offer. So we have a fairly large greenhouse that if you have a project here that you can use, and we can do the work in the greenhouse for you. So even if you're remote, we can still carry on any operations that you need. We also have a very large scale lysimeter that's fully functional and open for use when you have a project here. And then you can see behind the lysimeter, we have a tightly fenced in horticultural area where you can do your research as well. We have a brand new renovated lab. We're still in the final stages of outfitting it. So over the next 3 or 4 months, we'll be bringing in different types of equipment. We're going to focus, I think, at first on sample stabilization equipment and basic analyzation equipment. So we're looking at having distilled water, a desktop autoclave, centrifuge, look at doing a flash freezer, a biosafety hood. We have a functional fume hood, and then we've got desktop and benchtop space available for you. So really, again, these recs offer a great suite of facilities for any kind of research that you want to do. And then I'm just going to give you a brief overview of some of the facilities here. So this is our 1-bedroom cottage. It's fairly updated. It's a nice pastoral setting, really quiet. And throughout the whole center, we have fiber optics. So we've got high-speed internet throughout. And also we've got Wi-Fi throughout the main headquarters area. Also on site, we have 3 different cell towers. So we've got really good cell coverage, which, all of these things are important because you can have remote sensing equipment that then can relay the data to you at your campus site. That's the wrong way. This is Shippey Hall, 220 person capacity, full audio video equipment for presentations. We also have a museum of specimens collected on site, and then a dry lab for breakout sessions if you wanted to have a workshop here, or for conducting your own lab work if you don't need the full wet lab. This is the inside of Shippey Hall. As I mentioned, you can see on the wall in the distance our projector, and then we have a full set of tables and chairs and staff to help you set up for any kind of event that you want to host here. Currently, we have about 2,000 visitors to the center every year, and we host workshops, everything from a few hours long workshop. We just had one this last weekend on the cannabis research that the UC Berkeley Cannabis Research Center is doing. Everything from that to a 5-day long youth summer camp. So it's a really flexible facility, air conditioned in the summer, heated in the winter, large outdoor patio, and catering kitchen so that you can have food with your event as well. One of the things that's great about Hopland Rec and the recs in general is that we have shop facilities to do the work that you need done, and we have skilled staff to do that work. So here I'm showing we have a full mechanics shop that can do any vehicle repair for our center vehicles, or if you have a particular piece of equipment on site, we can repair that. We also have a metal shop, the ability to weld and fabricate any type of metal equipment that you need, and then a full wood shop. So really, I mean, I just want to emphasize this as, we're a couple of hours from the campuses, but you can really have full staff support for any type of project that you want to do. This is our staff. Just wanted to point out that, we have crew that do everything from, we can build fences and enclosures, operate heavy equipment. We have a staff research associate, Allison, who I'll introduce in a minute, who can really help with your data collection and analysis and project design. And then we have skilled crafts and trade supervisor who can really keep the facilities up to date and help construct actual buildings if you need those for your projects. So I'm going to go into a little bit of the research that we currently have on site here. This is a project that is a good example of what our staff can do. So this is a project where a researcher, Blair McLaughlin, with a co-PI, Emily Zavaleta from UC Santa Cruz, wanted to do a project where they looked at collecting a variety of blue oak acorns from across the state through a range of really dry land areas down in the southern end of their range up through Hopland and even further north, and plant them out. But they wanted them installed in cages so that they wouldn't be subject to browsing by small mammals or large mammals. And then they also wanted to have an irrigation system to do drought projects, or to be able to manipulate the amount of precipitation. And so our crew here, we helped with the design. We found the site for them. We constructed an irrigation system using an existing well and plumbed, about a quarter-mile long pipeline. Helped lay out these 27 different plots. We have the heavy equipment on site, so we were able to trench 2 feet deep around the sides of these plots and lay in gopher wire, and then build out the cages over the top. And so this is going to be a long-term, multi-year project where one of the researchers is 4 hours away in Santa Cruz, and the other one is across the country at Hampshire College. But we're able to manage that for them here remotely. Another thing that we're able to do on site is we have a great working relationship with CAL FIRE. And there's a history of prescribed fire on site. Currently, we do prescribed burns for vegetation management, particularly around invasive species, but can also do prescribed burns as you need for your research project. And this is a project that was done in the past by Scott Stevens from Berkeley. And I just wanted to mention this because this is pre-wildfire event, was done in 2001. These are the same plots now that got reburnt by the fire in 2018. And the amazing thing about this is, we still have those existing plot boundaries and the records of the treatments that were done back then. And so now Scott Stevens and Erica Newman have come back in and put on a new research project in those old plots, but they have that pre-existing data and experience here to compare to. And there's another long-term researcher who I think some of these people can speak better than I can about their work here. And so I have some video clips that I'm going to share of different researchers and their experience here. So first is Dr. Adina Marylander.
Your research projects here on site. Can you tell us about what attracted you to this site for your studies?
Sure. Well, what I really love about working here at the Hopland Research and Extension Center is the variety of ecosystems that we can study here, as well as the diversity of species that we find here, like the plants and the animals. One of the things that I've also taken advantage of here at Hopland is the presence of historical data sets. Over the years, I've been able to take more of a retrospective look at the ecosystems, and it provides some context for our work as what was here before. And in particular, it's useful for students who don't have a lot of time to do their work. So over the years, we've been able to look at the changes in plant and the flora and in the wetland systems by having that information about the past from previous researchers. In the case of a student, one of my students was able to go to restoration treatments along the Parsons Creek, which have been here since the 80s. And he was able to then take the data that we observed now, and with that historical information, put together the importance of removing deer. He actually was able to document the importance of removing deer from the creek systems and the amount of recovery for the natural vegetation that occurred over that longer time period. And because Hopland Research and Extension Center is an extension center, other individuals, other landowners had come and looked at this demonstration project. And with that, they had returned to their own properties and done the same treatment. And because Hopland maintains very good relationships with its neighbors, the student was able to then go to the other sites, the neighboring sites, and document this same treatment. And the power of having a long time horizon and multiple sites allowed us to really document the influence of the deer removal on revegetation, as well as on this stream channel morphology, which really benefited our native fish recovery.
So Adina, I hope you don't mind me asking, because I know you're so good at this. One other thing, you mentioned the diverse habitats here and the diversity of species. Could you give us, in your words, just an overview of what kind of habitats we do have here?
Yeah, well, one of the places that we've enjoyed studying are the vernal pools, which is rather unusual that we have over 12 small vernal pools on site. We also have a natural lake, which is quite rare for the North Coast. And so that is especially unique system as well. And of course, we're dominated by annual grasslands, mixed woodland savanna. We also have mixed oak woodlands and a little bit of conifer on the site. And in particular, I want to point out the number of species. We have over 11 oak species on the property. We have some important hybrids. So a real ecotone for diversity. And with all of those oaks masting at different times, that helps us to maintain a very high abundance of wildlife as well, because there's always something to eat at Hopland when it comes to acorns.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
All right, I will now take us back into the slideshow here. If I get my cursor to work right. Okay, so I just want to introduce Allison Smith. She's our staff research associate who does a lot of the field work here and is going to speak about some of the wildlife research that we do on site.
Thanks, John. One of the main researchers that we have currently on the site doing research here is Justin Brashears in the Brashears Lab, and a number of his graduate students are also here studying ecology, in particular wildlife ecology. He is with the Department of Environmental Science, Policy and Management at UC Berkeley, And their focus is looking at the wildlife system as a whole, and in particular, how it interfaces with urban development and humans on the landscape. We have a project that looks at fences and wildlife connectivity and how animals travel across the landscape and use wildlife corridors, and how fences and roads impact their movement and their connectivity. Another one of our main studies is estimating deer population sizes. We're working closely with the California Fish and Wildlife on that, and we have currently a camera grid that goes all across our property, using trail cameras to look at not just deer, but all the wildlife population we have here. The deer population we're estimating using a combination of wildlife cameras, DNA samples, and we're also capturing and collaring deer and putting GPS collars on them, which we use to track them. And using this in a condensed model is helping California Fish and Wildlife to extrapolate the data into a larger area to estimate deer populations across the state. A new project that his group is starting is about wildlife resilience after the fire, and looking at our ecology here as far as both larger and small mammals, birds and insects, and how they're recovering post-fire, because we did have so much data pre-fire on what the wildlife population was that it's easy to then do different treatments and look at how the populations are recovering post-fire. Lastly, one of their projects is on non-lethal predator control and how it relates to human-wildlife conflict in our area. Because this is one of those opportunities that we have such a great data set. In particular, we have some tracks from which you can see on the screen. This is the GPS data points taken an hour apart during the fire, when the fire came through last year. And as well as it being really interesting that you can see the deer didn't go far during the fire at all. This was one of our does who went south just a little bit, but mostly stayed in her home range and pretty much just danced around the fire while it was burning. But this is just an example. The Brashears group has a huge data set, and I think it's a really good opportunity for collaboration, looking at some of the different researchers here and what data they've already collected and how they would be willing to share that and collaborate on other projects.
Yeah, and I found that that's true. Thank you, Allison. I found that that's true across the researchers that I've spoken with. I mean, after the fire, I've done a lot of outreach with the different current and former researchers, and across the board, everybody has been really open and willing to collaborate and talk about sharing their data sets. So I'm going to click into another project here, which is run by Dr. Mary Firestone out of UC Berkeley. And two things that are important about this. One is just showing that, again, kind of the expertise of the staff here in helping conduct experiments. We did all of the design and construction of these rainout shelters for Dr. Firestone's Trout Project. We constructed the shed for her. We built a precision watering system to ensure that the amount of precipitation on each of her plots was exact, and we also were able to design a system where we used untreated spring water because she didn't want to use our regular domestic water. So I'm going to switch now to a brief video by Mary Firestone describing her experience here.
My name is Mary Firestone. I'm a professor at the graduate school and a soil microbial ecologist at UC Berkeley. My lab has conducted research at HREC for over 20 years. Our research has ranged from microbial biogeography in soil to experimental drought manipulations. And we have utilized several different sites within the field station. There are many reasons why my lab keeps coming back to HREC to conduct our field research. Aside from the vast amount of acreage available, the field station boasts extensive and detailed weather and land use records, specialized and highly knowledgeable staff, and wonderful facilities, including lab and conference areas. From our research perspective, we would see emerging opportunities for research at HREC in the post-fire landscape to basically lie below ground, which is where we work. Fire, we have very little understanding of how fire impacts carbon cycling and carbon stabilization in soil. Does the shock of fire unlock those carbon compounds, organic carbon compounds stored below ground? Does it result in significant loss of the organic carbon below ground? Or over time, does the nutrient capital that is released by fire result in increased plant productivity and ultimately increased stabilization and storage of carbon below ground? Because of the diversity of research that is conducted at HREC, I believe a key opportunity for collaboration would be one that allows for collaboration across not only a range of disciplines, but also across a range of different scales. That is, ranging from microbial to landscape scale. I would like to make it very clear that we would never have been able to conduct our most recent research project, our field experiment over the last 3 to 4 years, without the extensive help and knowledge of the HREC staff and their resources.
All right, I'm very happy Mary was so willing to share that, her viewpoint, and also her ideas for collaboration. So up next, another project that we're having here at the site is around the effects of different disturbances on determining vegetation and ecosystem recovery. Here I'm just showing a shot of one of our pasture boundaries where different management regimes led to different levels of fire impact on the landscape. And Valerie Evener is a longtime researcher here, is very willing to be contacted to ask further questions of, and also very happy to collaborate. So I'm going to show a short video of her experience here and why she feels that working at HREC is a great opportunity.
Hey everybody, John asked me to give you guys a little bit of background on my experiences at Hopland and why I found it such a great place to work and why you should all work there. So just to give a little bit of background, I've been doing research at Hopland continuously since 1995. I started doing work there as a grad student, continued to do work there for 5 years when I lived on the East Coast and had a research position there. And since I've been at UC Davis, have always had some research at Hopland, as well as lots of my grad students have had their own independent projects at research at Hopland. There's so many great reasons to be there. First of all, the people are really awesome and the place is absolutely beautiful. And so it's just a place you fall in love with and you just love being. But beyond that, every project that I've done has really been vastly improved because of the great knowledge of the staff and the great vision and broad context of the staff, all of the great background data and long-term experiments that have been there, as well as the knowledge of the staff and how to really implement a project way better than often that I conceived of initially. And so just to give some examples, I've done a lot of work with plant-soil interactions, plant-animal interactions there, now have a lot of post-fire work. They've always been able to provide way better input and insight into how my experiments should be. They've also been able to make my experiments way more ambitious than myself and my crew would be able to do, and that's for a few reasons. One is they're incredibly great at logistics and building fences. And like when I had to do seed fences for 340 plots, I literally cut through miles of hardware cloth and got that done. And there's no way that was ever going to happen without their help. Same thing in terms of doing small mammal exclosures. They got backhoes in there and dug meters down and put fencing down in there. And that is not something I could accomplish at a lot of other sites. They're also, in terms of not a lot of other sites, they're willing to do a lot of great manipulations in service of science. So whether it's grazing manipulations or prescribed fire or different types of weed abatement, they are very collaborative and willing to work with researchers to be able to do big, large-scale studies, not just small little meter-squared plot studies, which really helps in terms of the context of our research. It's also an amazingly diverse site, lots of different ecosystem types, and then even for the same ecosystem, very varied soils, very varied topography and aspect, and so you can really look at heterogeneity across the site in a way that's hard to do replicated in lots of different sites that you don't have the same type of control across those sites. In terms of now post-fire, there's so many great opportunities. And one of the things is for wildfires, we have very few cases where there's pre-wildfire data, and there's great pre-wildfire data all over the place at Hopland, and lots of different ecosystems for soils, for plants, for wildlife. And so that allows for a template that we don't have in a lot of post-wildfire studies. They got out there right away and they got drone imagery, which is just an example of how aware they are of the kinds of things researchers need and the kinds of ideas and sort of key data that we can all build on and then build a bigger picture together. They're very aware of that. So always feel free to get in touch with me. I'm at UC Davis in Plant Sciences. I'm happy to share experiences or insights, and definitely come out to the field day in October. I'll also be there and be happy to chat with anybody who's got more questions. So that's it. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Hopland. I can't wait to go in October just because, again, I love it and it's beautiful, and I get to check out a bunch of my plots just for fun rather than sampling it, and that's it. Hey everybody, Jonathan.
All right. Again, Valerie Evner is wonderful to work with and really collaborative. So if you're able to make it to the field day, she's going to be talking about her research projects actually in the field. And she's got a range of sites. I think it's something like 30 sites across the whole station. Going into another project that we have here, just to look at this overview, this is really just post-fire, showing you kind of the difference in the treatments that we have here at Hopland and how there were different effects on the fire behavior and the damage to the flora and fauna. One of the people who currently has a research project looking at that is our forestry advisor, Dr. Michael Jones. He covers Lake Mendocino and Sonoma counties, and he's established, I think also about 40 plots across the station, and has been collecting data, in that post-fire, pre-rain time last year, and he's working on a multi-year study looking at oak survivability, and also is a very collaborative, and would be happy to talk with you in more detail about his work, but here's just kind of a brief statement about his experience here at Hopland.
Hi, my name is Michael Jones. I'm the UC Cooperative Extension Forest Advisor for Mendocino Lake and Sonoma counties. I'm currently standing at the Hopland Research and Extension Center, or HREC, and I'm up the hill from the main campus in an area that was impacted by the Mendocino Complex fires last year. So I'm a relatively new advisor with UC Extension, and I found HREC to be a very valuable resource in developing my program, not only for research efforts, but also in outreach education programs. They're really very supportive and collaborative in that sense. One of the first things I did when I started last year was to come up here and establish some long-term plots looking at oak woodland regeneration and survival following impacts from the fire. It's a really unique place to work. It's approximately 5,000 acres in size, 2/3 of which were burned in the fires. There's 11 oak species that occur here naturally, everything from blue oak woodlands down at lower elevations to black oak madrone stands higher on the site. And so there's lots of interesting research opportunities to explore, looking at forest health, oak woodland regeneration, survival, fir encroachment, insects, and disease. So it's a pretty great place to come. Not only is it awesome to work in the forest, but these views and weather is pretty awesome. So it's hard to complain. There's also a really long history of research here, everything from looking at oak woodlands and oak species in general, forest health, insects, disease, tick research, rangeland ecology, wildlife, birds. Boy, the list goes on. So there's lots of really great research going on up here. And that means there's lots of really great researchers to collaborate with. So I've been working with some on looking at how the fire impacted tick populations and wildlife and birds and all kinds of cool stuff. So I think it's a great place to come and do research. The staff and facilities are fantastic. They're really agreeable and willing to work with you in developing your program. They have great facilities to help build equipment if you need it, to maintain equipment, to repair equipment, and to keep long-term projects running and safe. And they have the people on staff to man those projects and help maintain them even if you can't always be here. So I think it's a great place to work and conduct research. It's been a great resource. They have awesome places to host meetings. They have the Shippey Hall. It's a really beautiful facility and has been a great place to hold workshops. So I think if you're interested in doing research in kind of a really unique habitat type with lots of opportunities in post-fire ecology questions compared to areas that weren't burned, or even just working in areas that haven't been burned, I think it's a really great place to work. And I encourage people to come check it out and develop some research programs. Not only do they have great facility and staff, but there's a great community citizen volunteer program. And so it's just an awesome place to work. So I encourage people to come here and check out the views. All
right. I promise that's the last big pitch we're going to do with another person, but Mike has been great to work with and also has offered to be very collaborative in sharing information. So I'm going to also show you now kind of online resources that we have here. One of the things that we have on our website, which you won't find for a lot of other places, is let me get to the right screen here. We have extensive species lists. So before you even come to Hopland, you're able to kind of check out the diversity of species that exist here. Extensive studies have been done on many of these species, and we do update these as possible. We also have an annotated bibliography, which can really help you see everything that has been done at Hopland. We're currently working on an update from the 2001 through current. I don't have a timeline when that will be completed, but we do have a lot of the information compiled. So if you want to learn more about what's been happening in the more recent time, please feel free to contact us. Another thing that we did post-fire is a collaboration with GIS, where we developed a web map and high resolution drone imagery of the site post-fire. So we have that snapshot. So what I'm showing you here is, if you Google UC ANR Rex ArcGIS, you come up with, on the first page, this data hub, which is applicable to both Hopland and all of the Recs, and you don't have to log in. You don't have to have a login for GIS to access it. So if you look down here, Hopland is listed. You can also go to all the different Recs across the center, across the state, and in each of these, you can find a list of really extensive data. I mean, all of the different projects that have been conducted over the years, the management treatments in the different pastures, the infrastructure, the species lists, and then one of the things that we also have in here is drone overflights in the post-fire environment. These first couple are prescribed fires that we've done, and then what I'm going to show you now is the drone imagery that we captured post-fire. And so what we did is we got a grant to have the GIS team fly their drones and capture imagery both in visible spectrum and in near infrared. And then this is like really high resolution. I mean, we're down to like 2.5 inches, which was, it made this wonderful point in time of the site just post-fire. And you can see from what's on screen here, I mean, you can see individual branches, you can see what the damage was to both the trees and the underbrush. And the imagery is so fine, you can actually pick out individual branches. And this imagery was taken over the entire burn area. So we have 3,200 acres of this imagery. It does take a little while to load sometimes because it's so in depth. But this gives you a real view of that point in time. So you can compare pre-fire, immediately post-fire, and then things that like Mike Jones and Valerie Evner have done. They've been taking samples in the fall and this spring. So we're having this really good time spectrum that you could use in your projects. Another thing that we have got is detailed LiDAR imagery of the site. So here's just a shot of a little area where you can see the roads, the stream bed. You can even see individual deer trails. So I just wanted to point this out of one of the things that we have here at Hopland is just this real diversity and depth of data that you're able to access. And I'm going to click back over to the slideshow here. And this is going to be back to Allison.
Thanks, John. So, this has been mentioned sort of in various spots by several people, but we really do have some of the highlights of things that have gone on here at Hopland. One of our most consistent long-term data sets is one of forage production. We have an annual forage production number and also our ongoing rainfall number. And that's just, it's very useful. It's a long-term set that's pretty rare to find anywhere outside a university setting. And so, Mike Jones in his talk had mentioned tick and tick studies. Dr. Bob Lane from UC Berkeley has been working on those for years, and he was one of the ones that discovered Lyme disease. We have a blue oak.
Oh, I was just going to mention, I think Bob Lane is in his 50th year now of that study. So in terms of like a really long-term data set with data every single year.
Right.
Wonderful resource.
Yeah, absolutely. The oaks have been mentioned. David Ackerley at Berkeley has a long 26-year blue oak common garden genetic study that he has going. You can see we have the soil map that we can provide of a Gowan's soil map of the entire center, and soil nutrient studies. So we've had soil science studies here going both on a broad scale and also down to the microecology of soil, like what Mary Firestone's lab is doing. As far as plant sciences, Dr. Evner and her plant studies, we also have various plant transsection surveys that have resulted in those species lists that John showed you. We've done quite a bit of invasive weed management research here, looking at different strategies for weed management and research on various things like ferns or herbicides or grazing. And those relate also to our sheep ranching and grazing studies, sort of an overall rangeland management view. One of the things I wanted to point out is that even though we do have a reduced flock of sheep, it went down from 500 to 125. That still gives us plenty of opportunities for research on the sheep, either grazing research or sheep studies. We're definitely still available for that, as well as our wildlife studies and our archaeology surveys. We haven't talked as much about those, but we do have extensive research that has been done in archaeology and records, both here and at Sonoma State. We've collaborated with them quite a bit also. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we've had a citizen science project monitoring phenology here on the center in various locations. So we do have data from that both pre and post fire. Thanks, John.
Great, thanks, Allison. So just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded, so any of this information that you want to go back to and refer to, you can. We'll post this on the website. And just here's a list of researchers that I've talked to who have current or past research on the site, who are really willing to collaborate, share data sets, ideas, raw data, published studies, all of that. So, I'm just briefly going to mention this list, and you can come back and refer to that at your leisure on the recorded webinar. But all of these people that I've talked to have said, we really value the collaboration with other researchers and would be happy to be contacted to talk about future collaborations. If you want to get further information, we have listed Hopland on the Reserve Access Management System, which is where all of the natural reserves are. They have the ability to book different facilities on. So you can go on to rams.ucnrs.org and learn a little bit more about Hopland and also book your visits here. And then we are having a researcher field day on October 18th. It's a Friday from 10 to 5. And what we're going to do is do a tour of the site. We'll have the vehicles provided. We'll have multiple researchers who are currently doing work at certain stops. They'll kind of discuss their research and talk about potentials for collaboration. Then we'll come back. We'll have a catered lunch. And then we'll have more intensive presentations, but still limited to about 10 or 15 minutes from another set of researchers currently doing work here. And then if you want to stay over, we do have the dorms and the houses available. The link on here is where you can go to book that, and it's free of charge. I mean, we do have a charge for the accommodations. That's just kind of our standard policy here, but everything else is all provided. So we'd be happy to see you here that day, or also if you have other people who may be interested, let them know. And then, our website is a great location to go to just kind of get more information. And then, as I mentioned, links to those species list, to this webinar and others, and also to the drone maps and the overflights that can help you kind of identify where you might want to have your plots, or to where you want to follow up and ask questions. And so if you want to contact me via phone call or via email, I'm happy to answer any particular site questions or questions about the research. I can also forward some of those on to Allison, because she is the one, as our staff research associate, who's really conducting these studies and can talk with you in more detail. I mean, she's the real person who knows all the details of the site and what's happening. And then Hannah Bird is our community educator, and she does all of the planning of extension events. She could help you talk through any catering options, what the accommodations are, and let you know what's available at what time. So really, I think that's kind of what we wanted to talk through. We're really happy to field any questions. I'm going to look in the chat here and see if we have any so far. I don't see any yet. So if anybody wants to chime in and unmute, they're welcome to. We'll hang on here for a couple minutes in case somebody types in anything, but otherwise we'll end in just a minute or two. And also, if you want to go to the chat box, Hannah did post our project list of current projects, what our facilities are, so you have more information about that, and then also the survey link again to book the field day. All right, I guess if there's no other questions or comments, we'll end here. But thank you everybody for joining, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in the future.